The month of July is celebrated as Nelson Mandela Month, a time for people worldwide to engage in acts of kindness and compassion to honor the legacy of this extraordinary political icon and his significant contributions to humanity. Now, the Revelation Spiritual Home, a respected African indigenous spiritual institution, organizes an annual spiritual pilgrimage that attracts hundreds of thousands of Africans from all corners of the continent and the diaspora. As attendees come together, the pilgrimage becomes a vibrant tapestry of cultural exchange and spiritual enlightenment. Now, to discuss this a bit more further, we are now joined by data analyst and researcher Sam Langa from the Revelation Spiritual Home. Sam, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. Now, of course, we've just come out of Mandela Month, and that was celebrated in the month of July, and it is something that is celebrated worldwide. And you are holding something very significant as we reflect on the former President Nelson Mandela's legacy by holding this spiritual pilgrimage. Tell us more about this.
Okay, good evening to you, Mbali, and also good evening to all our viewers. It is good to note, Mbali, that while the nation was actually celebrating Mandela Month, the Revelation Spiritual Home, a spiritual institution that advocates for African indigenous spirituality, embarked on a spiritual pilgrimage, where the role of this spiritual pilgrimage was to restore and revive the African indigenous spirituality and also the restoration of African indigenous spiritual identity. So the devoted and loyal members of the Revelation Spiritual Home took this spiritual pilgrimage, which is celebrated annually, for the re-promulgations of this covenant and also the revival and renewal of this covenant, because of it means a significant role in the life of an African. So throughout July, the Revelation Spiritual Home undertakes this spiritual journey to revive and renew this spiritual covenant. And secondly, not only was the spiritual covenant renewed, the Revelation Spiritual Home, under the founder and leader of the Revelation Spiritual Home, celebrated the mass wedding, where close to 32 couples were actually blessed. In fact, the Revelation Spiritual Home advocates for family building because of it forms part of the well-being of society. So about 32 couples were actually blessed, and none other was the celebration of our New Year, because at the Revelation Spiritual Home we follow our African indigenous calendar, where at end of July marks the end of the year and the beginning of August marks the new spiritual year, where we celebrated the crossover from 2025 going into 2026. This is where now we mark the beginning of a new year on August, same as the Basotho nation, where they also follow their old calendar that begins in July and ends, that begins in August and also ends in July.
Yeah, and Sam, maybe if you can also just give us a bit of insight when it comes to this spiritual pilgrimage, which you say takes place in July. Who was a part of this pilgrimage, and can anybody attend this pilgrimage?
Mbali, it's good to note, firstly, that anyone can attend at the Revelation Spiritual Home, because of it's a home, it's an institution for all Africans to also embark on this institution. But when it comes to spiritual pilgrimages, like any other institution and also in religion, for instance, the Islam, they also have their own religious principles on how to go about in terms of visiting the Mecca. Also at the Revelation Spiritual Home, not everyone can visit or partake in this spiritual pilgrim. But what is important is that one needs to make a decision to become a loyal and a devoted member of the Revelation Spiritual Home by partaking into this spiritual covenant. So the members who have actually undergone this pilgrimage are devoted, loyal members who say they take upon themselves to uphold this covenant and its mission, and also adhere to the spiritual principles and laws that underpin the spiritual covenant. So anyone who wishes to embark on the spiritual covenant, they also need first to understand what it means to become a spiritual member at the Revelation Spiritual Home. Because of it is important that you undergo and partake into something that which you already have knowledge of. So it is important to note that any person is welcome at the Revelation Spiritual Home. But when it comes to our spiritual pilgrimage, it requires one to become a full member and also a devoted, loyal member who is also eligible to partake in the spiritual covenant. Because of its role, it's more beyond just to go to our spiritual institutions and seek for spiritual guidance through rituals and spiritual revelations, but you take a step to say this spiritual mission of restoring Africa's spiritual identity and also the revival of African indigenous spirituality, you take it upon yourself and say, this is part of my responsibility and my purpose on earth.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. That is Sam Langa. He is a data analyst and researcher for the Revelation Spiritual Home, just giving us an insight there in terms of what they conducted as they celebrated Nelson Mandela Month, which is the month of July, as much as a number of people participated or partook in this initiative worldwide.